Welcome back, everyone, as we move forward. And, of course, we've got a treat for you. Again, as we were just talking about it, it's Gore and Trelly, by the way. We're going from our first two groups of double elim. We took two teams from those groups and got rid of them, got two teams from each of those groups, and have thrown them into another best-of-3 double elimination bracket. And from here, we're going to be taking it, you'll guess it, two teams and throwing them out, two teams, and taking them with us to the SWC group stages in January. So you've got a lot of work to be done if you want to make it there, and it's going to be starting with this next match. First up, Hex Mambo and Solar Scarabs. Later on, we'll be watching the Wargs and the Tanuki. Tomorrow, we will be qualifying two teams and eliminating two teams. So right now, like as we had said earlier, you hit the 1-ups, and you got your level ups going into this bracket, but there's still actually maybe even more pressure on you now to do well because, as you can see here, the Scarabs, who just won, came in as the number 2 seed, and the only team that they were behind Trelly was Hex Mambo, who is the number 1 seed. A lot of names, former teammates, both in the SCC and prior, a lot of former SBL players, a lot of names that you should recognize if you've been in the EU SCC, and Trelly, it's at the point where it is a very exciting matchup.
Oh, no doubt in my mind. And we just got to watch the Solar Scarabs, and of course, a big conversation was, taking your leads, your massive leads that the Scarabs are able to grab, and using those to, get yourself in a winning position, get yourself towards an objective, towards, ending the game, anything like that. And against Hex Mambo, there's not going to be as many opportunities, right? You need to make sure if you have a small lead like that, you can translate it into objective, you can translate it into concise end calls and sieges. The Solar Scarabs, as far as I'm concerned, it was pretty lucky that they didn't just end that set in a bad way, because they did make a couple mistakes there. You cannot bring that here to the Mambo. I'm hoping they bring their A game, because they certainly can compete at that level, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's all coming down to a little bit of pressure for them, seeing how they're going to perform here. In game number 1, as we jump into picks and bans, now the Scarabs, last set they played, they won the games that they were first pick, lost the game they were second pick. Right. So luckily for them, their first pick here, and we're going to have to see how well they can perform and what they prioritize. Last time around, Opwash was that very last game at the top. You can imagine Hex Mambo's not going to be allowing that, and they banned it out immediately. The other thing I was kind of curious about, it's this Mammon that we've been seeing. The Scarabs ban out more than pick up, right? They haven't been leaving that as an option for themselves, which makes it really interesting to see the dynamic, because usually it feels like she'd be the one that you're vying for right now. Instead, Trelly with Thoth, Athena banned, along with the Raijin and the Chernobog and those others that we had mentioned prior.
Yep.
It's a Kukulkan up at the top.
Yep, the Cuckoo, always going to be a good look. The burst is so in right now as far as what you need for a Fire Giant or just any sort of siege defense. But to your point, I think Mammon is just difficult enough to where if you don't feel 100% confident on her, you might as well just take her away. Because if you catch someone that is 100% confident on her, they're going to have a field day. And if you're not, you might not get that value. But the Hachiman, the Poseidon, this is looking like pretty much every single EU draft we've seen so far. Very powerful in the top 2. You don't reveal much about your draft. And, of course, you've got that pressure in lane, which is what everyone is looking for.
Oh, it's matched Hachi, Poseidon, Baba Yaga on the other side, Hell and Yemoja. A lot of healing here for the Scarabs to carry up in their late game fight. But a lot of late game damage locked in, and now some early game facilitation for that in the Ratatoskr. Looks like Thor's going to be matching him in the jungle. And with the Hell locked in alongside Yemoja, that seemingly throws her back over, maybe towards solo. Do you like, you had kind of mentioned like the Hell matchup into the Poseidon is one that it's at least acceptable.
Well, once I saw Deathwalker actually perform on the Hell versus Poseidon matchup, I believe literally last game.
Yep.
I understand what he's going for, right? You can heal up the wave as Poseidon goes for clear. You can cleanse yourself from the Kraken, and you can try and fight in that 1v1. It just seems like a matchup that he enjoys. I personally wouldn't like playing it, but I'm not a Hell player. So, if that's something that Deathwalker can go to just, stop that Poseidon pressure, which he's already shown to be able to do, then I like it.
And we have seen actually like several times in the past as well where a Hell solo played appropriately. Also, there he goes, Trelly.
Yep.
He flew by. Yep. Finally got him. We've been like the lowest version of the NORAD Santa tracker as we've been waiting for him to fly by on the background. It is something, though, that can make a huge difference. And I'm having flashbacks. I believe it was variety playing with like playing up against like Jake. I remember because Jake was on the Ares, blinked in, got like a 5-man ult, and Variety saved all of them with a cleanse. A solo lane hell can do a whole lot, and we just saw that from the Scarabs. But the question is, how will they fare against Hex Mambo? The only way to find out is to go down to the casters.
Thank you so much, Gore, and thank you, Desk. You got Dimes, you got Alpha Jackal teaming up once again. Good to be back with you, pal. And it's the Hex Mambo taking on the Solar Scarabs. Now, we're in a unique situation here, AJ, where we just got to watch the Solar Scarabs for an entire 3-game set, immediately transitioning here into this game against the Hex Mambo. I know we're supposed to be talking about the set in front of us here, but what can you take from what we just saw that might be influential as we head into the set versus the Mambo?
Well, what I can take from it is that Solar Scarabs looked a little bit shaky in that game number 2. They should have won it comfortably, but in the end, they lost. And that's going to give Hex Mambo a whole lot of momentum, a whole lot of good vibes for it, but Silence certainly feeling a lot of pressure here.
Cozyx and Spudio hunting down the enemy support. Looks like they're going to let him walk away as well. A slight win there for the Hex Mambo as Cozyx hasn't given up on the chase completely yet. Dzoni dashing in on the Ratatoskr. There's the Echrome, but a nice beads out of iSilenced. Going to be un-CC'd for just a little bit longer here and lasting long enough at the very least to make it under tower, but you strip a little bit of farm away. Same thing goes for Cozyx, though. Maybe delay the return to lane as well.
But look at how far Echrome is at. He's level 3 already. And that's one of the benefits of this strategy is your ADC gets so far ahead. And in a dual lane matchup like this, where you can't separate them in these top 2 EU dual lanes, any small advantage you can get is a win.
We're here in the solo lane. This is a matchup that, of course, AJ, I'm impartial. I'm a neutral caster here for some great games. But, kind of quiet. Well, we know. That's why. Anyways, I'm not going to. I had my fingers subtly crossed for this matchup. Deathwalker, one of the best to ever do it, versus Julio, who has been nigh unstoppable in the solo lane the past couple of days, especially on this Poseidon pickup.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising to see how well Julio's adapted going into this sort of mage solo lane meta. You think of Julio, you think of tier immediately. There's no other god that comes to mind when you think of Julio. But he's played this Poseidon like it's his tier. He's played it to such a high degree where it's almost criminal that he's got it yet again. But you have to respect the sheer pick quantity that Hex Mambo have in their god pools.
Dzoni and apreel making their way over to the solo lane, but nothing doing it as they retreat to their respective jungles and try to farm it up here. Luckily, that 2-level lead has been recaptured a little bit here in the dual lane for the Hex Mambo as Echrome ticks over to level 4 just 1 moment ago. And looking at these two junglers, both semi-global ultimates, both pressure from the sky, right? Both able to rotate quickly and effectively. Is there a particular side of the map that you would expect these two fellas to head towards in the early goings?
I would be partial to go over towards the dual lane because, like I mentioned, how close that matchup is. But you know what these junglers are like. They're going to be going into the solo lane because they want their solo laners. They want their power players to be able to rotate from this lane early and just have a decent laning phase. So if you're able to get this hell online earlier, it's a huge win for the Solar Scarabs. If Hex Mambo are able to put this hell behind and get Julio rotating often, those Krakens are going to smack.
In the middle lane, we've seen the Kukulkan picked up to nice success. We've seen the Thoths, the Raijins, things like that. This Baba Yaga has fallen to the wayside just a little bit, now being picked up here by Rapio. And don't get it twisted, this Baba Yaga has never fallen out of favor. Can do just as much damage, has just as much survivability, hopping in the cauldron with the home sweet home. What is this Baba Yaga offering to the Hex Mambo composition that Rapio picked up in Picks and Bans?
Well, I'm going to touch on that in a second as Echrome has to get away first. He manages to teleport out thanks to that Bifrost. Let's go back to the lane. But Baba Yaga, I think, just brings a whole lot of control and damage as well as good survivability. And that's going to be the main thing that you're looking for, is in a composition, in a meta where it's so focused heavily on burst and control, if you have the ability to resist, then control the field yourself, and also pump out a lot of damage, you've hit the trifecta there. You are then one of the best gods in the game, by default. And that's what Rapio's going to bring on this Baba Yaga.
An opportunity here for just a little bit longer in the duo lane. iSilenced just hits level 4, so those Rivers Rebuke, the Yemoja ultimate, is going to be down for at least one more full level Everyone else on the map has hit level 5. Ultimates online, including, notably, Dzoni and Apreel with those semi-global ultimates in the Thor and the Ratatoskr. So we could see a little bit of action before iSilenced hits level 5 on the left-hand side. But so far, quiet on the battleground here, and the Hex Mambo have been prime, I would say, as Zyrhoes has to use the ultimate almost defensively there, knocking up Dzoni, dishing out a little damage, and CC as well. The Hex Mambo have been really matching pace, I suppose is the best way to put it, to their opposition, and letting their opposition dictate the pace, and then finally letting their own composition spin up over time.
And I'm not sure if that's going to stand them in good stead going into potential SPL level matchups where you don't have that time and space to just follow the opposition. You have to try and set the pace yourself, because an SPL opposition will just take advantage of the fact if you're stepping off, if you're stepping back. It might be a fact that all of these teams in this European SEC showing maybe a little bit too much respect to Hex Mambo. You have to show them respect because of its Hex Mambo, because of its Dzoni. But at the same time, if you smell the fact that they are being passive, if they're letting you fight into them, lean into it. Fight into them as much as possible.
Now, my question, AJ, is do the Solar Scarabs have those capabilities, right? Do they have the tools in the toolbox? Obviously, you have the Thor that's going to be great in the early game, but how does the Solar Scarabs match up here pre-10 minutes?
I think it all hinges on iSilenced. You have a look at the River's Rebuke. That is such a good ultimate ability, not just to trap somebody in between those rivers, but to also then block off sides of the map. You can split the fight up into 3 separate parts. The ones that are behind the wall, which is most likely going to be your team, the ones in between the walls, your target, and the ones behind the walls, the opposition players that you're trying to zone. Cozyx isn't going to be able to get in. Dzoni will have to use a Blink to get in, but he doesn't have Blink. He's chosen Beads as his first relic. Julio's not going to be able to get into those rivers. Spudio is going to have to try and dance around it. Rapio's the only one that can escape, so you have a good chance of finding somebody that you're going to be able to trap and then probably kill before those walls collapse, leaving yourself with a 5 versus 4. It all hinges on iSilenced.
AJ, I'm glad you pointed out the beads pickup here. Both of the junglers, in fact, opting towards the beads instead of the blink that we traditionally see from junglers that are looking to get things rolling a little bit early on. I mean, that's just screaming to me that both these junglers are not wanting to get things going here as Thor slams down. It makes me eat my words. Julio, CC immunity gets locked down from the wall. Kraken coming out with the beads used from Apreel to immune away the knockup. One more shot at a Deathwalker is going to drive Julio into tower. And here's the counterpunch from Dzoni on a low mana Deathwalker. A nice wall there to stop the aggression, but not good enough out of Apreel. Dzoni, who else takes first blood for Hex Mambo?
You couldn't write it any better. Dzoni gets a kill for first blood against his former teammate Deathwalker. It's such an unfortunate situation there for Apreel. If he waits, I think even just a quarter of a second longer with that wall, he hits Julio without him having beads up. He gets the kill there, and they have first blood on themselves. But the beads were still active. The cleanse was still active once that wall came down, and Julio was able to dance away from the double tap.
It's tough to play that any tighter than Apreel played it. Just a nice rotation there from Dzoni. It's going to spell first blood at just about 7 minutes here in game number 1 of this best of 3 between the Solar Scarabs. 1-1 so far in this EU Championship weekend. The Hex Mambo so far undefeated at a 2-0 record. And, they were talking on the desk. Gore mentioned that Hex Mambo coming in as the number 1 seed, Solar Scarabs right behind him. I don't think it's as close as the seeds really represent. It's like Hex Mambo's the 1 seed, and then there's a comfortable gap, and then the 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed. And it's kind of, it's been shown in the play this weekend.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, you ask any member of the casting team, you ask any member of the community, you ask any member of the SPL, and they say, who's the one SEC team you think is going to qualify? Every single one of them says Hex Mambo.
Nice yoink in there from Cozyx. Put Apreel under half HP. Just a scrap over some mid lane harpies. Going to go the way of Hex Mambo. Zyrhoes has to burn the beads to immune away the pluck. iSilenced there just for moral support. And only still 1 kill on the board here. It's in Hex Mambo's pocket, who have really not been amassing too much of a lead. I mean, even that 500 bounty for first blood has kind of been washed away here, under 500, now 200. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this game is straight up dead even as we approach the 10-minute mark, which is kind of antithetical to what we've seen from the Mambo, who have been macro farming to such perfection that by the time 10 minutes comes around in some of the other games we've seen, they're already working on a 2K lead.
And it's hard to tell who that really benefits as well. You have a look at both of these compositions. Both have sort of their ace in the hole. I mean, Kukulkan this weekend has been an absolute monster of a pick. I think it was 75% win ratio after 12 picks. He's a good god to get locked in against a team like Hex Mambo just because of that statistic alone. You have Deathwalker on this hell. You've got Echrome on this Heimdallr as well. You know, good late game picks. But then you look at Hex Mambo as well. Dzoni, as just a person himself, is actually going to be ganked here, almost down.
Goodness gracious, Dzoni almost 100-0 there from apreel. Kraken with a beautiful knockup, but apreel just taking the end of the double tap to take out the enemy jungler. Julio did just about all you could there. Zero sends out the big Drago, doesn't knock up anyone. He's going to get a couple ticks of the tornado onto Cozyx. And a nice return kill there, 1-1. Both junglers from both of these teams have now notched a kill onto their belts.
Dzoni had beads up that entire time. I think he had threw the Cosmos up as well. So, odd decision maybe not to have used it. Maybe he thinks he could get out without using it. But apreel with a beautiful double tap. I don't think he could time that any better like he did last time.
And that's just with a tier 2 item. I mean, you go Transcendence, you go Dominance, probably not. But, you know, there's a lot of paths you can go. And it's going to be the, drumroll please, Transcendence pickup. Throw some stacks on that. But, I mean, once that bad boy is stacked up and you get all of the power from that item, that one, not 100-0, we'll call it an 85-0 there on Dzoni, is going to turn into that 100-0 real quick.
Maybe about 99-0, depending on the level difference. Right. Yeah, you're right. But it's also that 10% CDI is going to get on top of the Yonsraf's 20. He'll be practically full up on CDI. You don't have to buy another CDR item because you'll have your potion later on in the game to give you that 40%. You can get your blue version of your buff to give you an extra 10% CDR. He's going to be absolutely flying around this map.
3,200 to 3,100. Called about 1,000 gold lead here for the Solar Scarabs at 11.5 minutes. And the only reason I bring it up, in 9 out of 10 other SMITE games we'd chat about, AJ, I'd be like, 1,000 gold, it's even, who cares? It's 1,000 gold on the Hex Mambo. It's worth mentioning here at just about 12 minutes. Any gold lead is a pretty significant one here on the Mambo. And if you're the Mambo, where are you looking to try to maybe shore up the bleeding a little bit and find a foothold to start pushing forward?
I'm going to want to come over to this dual lane. Like I mentioned before, it's such a tight matchup, and, you know, Spudio's a tiny bit behind. Whenever Spudio has been ahead on picks that he enjoys, like the Hachiman, like the Ram, he has dominated games. If he's behind, it's sort of difficult for him to then get into that aggressive mindset that he likes to play in. So I'd come over here, put Echrome down a bit, put him under pressure a little bit, then try and maybe farm up for the Gold Fury.
Echrome has some survivability with this Bifrost. Dzoni locked into the comms here. AJ's comms, Echrome, there's that Bifrost. It's so survivable, and it's what makes Heimdallr such a good pick, as apreel goes up and comes right back down to secure this shield buff for the likes of the Solar Scarabs duo lane. Got to be a pluck here on the iSilenced. They might have the damage here to take out the Yemoja. Spudio with the final tick of damage. Onto the support player. Dzoni goes immediately into the air to try to keep this party going. Echrome's grouped up with apreel, but Dzoni turns tail and heads toward the Gold Fury.
I don't think they're going to do this. Actually, are they going to try and start? apreel is in the area, but he doesn't have his ult available. He's going to maybe try and check for a steal. Zyrhoes is in mid lane. Zyrhoes is not coming to this.
Earlier, Gold Fury goes the way of the Solar Scarabs. apreel comes up. Huge. 4 members of the Hex Mambo right there. And apreel says, thank you very much, as the Solar Scarabs extend their gold lead on Hex Mambo.
Okay, I was about to start saying, why is Zyrhoes going to be in, why is he in this mid lane? He can steal this. He believed in apreel. He knew he was going to steal it. He was clairvoyant and can see the future. What a steal from apreel. That extends the gold lead of Solar Scarabs to about 1,700.
We're still in that position where it's like, okay, this is very easily, you know, do a little bit of farming, maybe grab a couple extra waves than your opposition, and you're right back in the mix. I mean, checking out the levels, dead even in solo, dead even in support, just hovering around even in the remainder of the roles, as mid lane has come to parity now at level 15. I mean, this is a dead even game. I don't want to blow it too out of proportion, don't want to catastrophize here. But with the Gold Fury down, Pyromancer down, we're kind of all out of neutral objectives, AJ.
Yeah, to be fair, that steal could be the most important thing to happen this entire game. It could be the momentum shift for them. Spudio about to be momentum shifting on, but that is going to be him A-OK. The wall misses from Apreel, and reinforcements have arrived in the form of Dzoni, Cozyx, and potentially Rapio.
Pretty much everyone here from the Hex Mambo, minus the solo laners, a 4v4 as Cozyx gonna take some ticking damage from the tornado, and that is a Kukulkan with some power online as Julio drops low.
God.
Drops very low, taking on Deathwalker over in the solo lane. But with this build that's been coming out of the mid laners, the Book of Thoth and the Divine Ruin into XYZ, and kind of branch out from there. I mean, you've got tons of mana, you got tons of power, a little bit of anti-heal and penetration in there as well. It's kind of a jack of all trades, and you know what? Master of all of them too.
Yeah, I'm waiting to just see sort of how these solo laners do get involved into this game, though. They've sort of been locked over here on this right-hand side of the map. Haven't even ventured out into the Fire Giant pit, save for one rotation from Julio. And now it's about the time where you sort of expect a Deathwalker, you expect Julio to start making their presences known. But we have seen with these solo lane mages that they tend to stay in solo lane just a little bit longer to farm up a third item.
Pyromancer has respawned, though, AJ. Could be a prime opportunity for both Julio and Deathwalker to get things going. Dzoni and Deathwalker going mano-a-mano here on the right-hand side. Whoa, those acorns do plenty of damage here at 15 minutes. But guess who's joined the party? It's apreel slamming down on the head of Dzoni. Didn't do too much damage on the initial engagement, though. Whirlpool comes out. Cozyx and Rapio have joined the fray. iSilenced right behind him. Deathwalker and apreel just a breath away from death, and both of them will fall into the grayscale for the next 33 seconds. Synced up even. That's pretty aesthetically appealing. As the Hex Mambo can really take their pick. Blue buff, Pyromancer, tier 1 tower. It's really just whatever card you want to draw.
Well, it's going to be the first two in that sequence. I don't think they're going to get the tier 1 tower. The respawn time is for apreel 15 seconds. Silence is looking for this.
Oh, no. There's a shot here. Zyrhoes just a little bit off the mark. As Silence might be in a tough spot here as Cozyx has kept the corner secured. Silence with a nice bit of CC. Little jump away there is going to be able to escape. The Hex Mambo ultimately secured the Pyromancer.
Zyrhoes just a little bit too far away with that ultimate. If he was a little bit closer, I think he steals it. I think he timed it well. It was just his distance wasn't quite right.
So we haven't really seen, I mean, 000 Zyrhoes is living up to his name right now.
Yeah.
Plenty of damage, sure. The ticks have been great. Seen a couple ultimates connect. When does this Kukulkan really make an impact? Obviously in the team fights, but what has to occur for the solo Scarabs? What are the perfect conditions for Zyrhoes to really go nuts?
I think it has to be you dunk down with Thor onto a group of 3 people. Tornado, Spirit of the Nine Winds comes out, and all of a sudden there's 3 dead bodies right there in front of you. You're not surviving a Thor and Kukulkan combo. I don't care if you're Cozyx even. You are still dying to that. And that is them most likely an objective or 2 going on to them as well. The issue is, we know Hex Mambo are astute players, more so than you would say an SEC team would be, given that caliber of experience. They won't group up like that. They'll make sure that they are spread apart enough where they can assist each other, but that a Thor's only going to dunk on 1, maybe 2 people at most.
So much action on that right-hand side. Almost forgot this Primal Fury hovering around, being ready to roll here as the Solar Scarabs are going to step into the Gold Fury pit and grab themselves some pressure here on the left-hand side. Hex Mambo have responded in kind, though. Cozyx leading the charge here as Dzoni, Rapio, and Spudio trying to get around the backside. Hex Mambo grab a steal of their own, says thank you very much. Johnny's gonna fall for it. Zyrhoes picking up kill number 1. Cozyx taking plenty of damage as well. But apreel's got to hammer out of there before he falls. Julio takes out iSilenced in the meantime. Deathwalker looking pretty worse for wear. Julio has a ton remaining in the tank. Full health, full mana, everything except the Kraken. Zyrhoes wants to keep the party rolling as well. The Hex Mambo able to grab their objective, only give away Dzoni for it, and get back to base.
That is huge. Look at that. The goal difference now completely even. You said it was an even game. Now it is an even game in pretty much every single metric you want to look at it. I mean, Rapio is now just hitting level 18, so Zero is a tiny bit ahead in experience, but the experience at this point is negligible. The biggest lead, surprisingly, coming into solo lane. Deathwalker 2 levels behind his solo lane counterpart in Julio.
AJ, I want to rewind for a second to that Gold Fury, to that takeaway from Hex Mambo. We saw the Spirit of the Mind Winds, that giant dragon come out from the Zyrhoes. It does tons of damage. I mean, how do you play that better if you're Zyrhoes to make sure you secure the objective? Or is it a CC? Is it a frontliner issue? What could the Solar Scarabs have done better in that situation?
It has to come down to a comms issue there. I mean, way back when, we're talking some of the olden times of SMITE back in Season 4, Season 5, when we and Rival were doing objectives. We would always, before we got there, sort of say, right, what are we going to use to secure? Who's going to use the zone? We basically planned it out like a military operation. And there was always this one call out from the person with the biggest secure, most likely would have been Wolfie in that situation. He would call out a number, the health bar that the secure would then happen on. And the second it hits that health bar, the second you see the health bar, instantly everybody goes into the situation where they're securing. So everybody knows the exact same point when the secure needs to happen, so you can pile 2 or 3 abilities on top of each other at the same time. Maybe the communication just needs a little bit more work from Solar Scarabs at that point. It's just so difficult to say without hearing their comms.
Solar Scarabs may be needing to clean a couple things up in the objective secure realm. Hex Mambo have drawn this thing right back to even. The Solar Scarabs, I mean, you struggle against the Tartarus Titans, and you're like, okay, maybe going into Hex Mambo, like, this may not be as big of a competition as you'd expect. But, I mean, the Solar Scarabs putting up a heck of a fight here against the #1 seed in Europe, and certainly showing why they've earned their way here to this second pool.
And Hex Mambo looking like they're going to try and start up the Pyromancer here. You think Solar Scarabs have made maybe one mistake? There's a good hit, but a good Aegis from Julio as well.
A nice leash to stop the Solar Scarabs from securing the Pyromancer for at least a second. In the end, though, Pyromancer heads the way of the Solar Scarabs. The Hex Mambo are following up with the fight, and Deathwalker falls to Dzoni on the back of Julio's Kraken. Hex Mambo trading out objectives once again. I mean, grabbing the objective, grabbing the kill, starting to maybe draw that lead. I mean, not even a lead. They're still behind the Solar Scarabs. It's just a straight-up punch, counter-punch, back and forth here in game #1.
And this is something which I've seen from some of the best teams in the world in the past. This is what Hex Mambo are doing. Second they lose an objective, they always make sure they take something from it, whether it be a kill, whether it be a buff, whether it be a tower or a different objective. There's always a trade-off. They will make sure you have to sacrifice something for that objective. Some teams in the past, they would have just let you have the objective, got nothing in return for it, and you would have had a free gold boon. Not with Hex Mambo, everything comes at a cost.
We're at 21, call it 22 minutes. And the kill's still in the single-digit mark here, as only 2 towers have fallen in total here in game #1. You got a tier 1 on the left-hand side and a tier 1 on the right-hand side. Tells me neither one of these squads are particularly interested in pushing down lanes, but Solar Scarabs certainly interested here in getting this Fire Giant going, but the Hex Mambo responding in force here. Guess who's in the air? It's Dzoni looking for a target. Fire Giant at half HP. Apreel dunks down in the back line onto Spudio, but Dzoni has created so much space here in the Solar Scarabs back line. They're forced to back off, get some heals, and this is where Deathwalker comes up huge.
It's just such a split fight from the Solar Scarabs, though. Apreel whiffs the ultimate just a little bit. I think it's safe to say that he didn't intend to land behind Spudio rather than on him. Julio's actually going to be the target here, going to escape the clutches of Zyrhoes and the rest of them, and then back again for the Hex Mambo. The Solar Scarabs are looking to heal up. Look at this, maybe catch out Dzoni as he's pushing up this mid lane, but he's a Ratatoskr with a full Acorn and a speed buff. Good luck chasing him.
Yeah, no shot there. No ultimate down for Dzoni. That's going to be down for just a little bit longer. And we saw the Solar Scarabs take a good chunk of damage, and if you look on the left-hand side of their health bars, full. Like almost 100%. Deathwalker has done his job, healed them all back to full. These elongated engagements are going to go the way to Solar Scarabs every single time, and that's really going to be helpful for them if they ever get to the sieging stage.
Let's have a look at the anti-heal available on the Hex Mambo. You have the 2 major anti-heal items in the Brawler Speed Stick and the Divine Ruin. And you also have the Cursed Ankh on Cozyx. So you've got everything you need to be able to deal with the healing from hell in combat. But you're right, it's the out-of-combat healing which can still be a little bit of a nuisance. Solar Scarabs get a free Gold Fury. You know, I did jinx myself earlier. That is a free objective that Hex Mambo have not punished you for. Yet. Yet.
Hex Mambo starting up the Fire Giant, but they've given the Solar Scarabs so much time to rotate over from the Gold Fury pit. Starting in late, Fire Giant's about half HP. Hex Mambo not committing. Holy smokes, Rapio took a huge chunk of damage there out of the Zephyr from Zyrhoes. That Dragon Breath is gnarly. Pop a couple mints, homie, as the Hex Mambo have to head back to base, heal, and get back into position to defend this Fire Giant.
I thought of it more as a Dragon's Spit rather than a Dragon's Breath.
Think so? I mean, it's like air, right? It's like percussive. It's not, he's not like spitting. The Kukulkan is like, you know.
Yeah, but how do you blow air that hard? I know he's a god and all.
It's a dragon. Yeah, we're talking about what a dragon can do. As the Titans have been unleashed here on the right-hand side, quickly going to go down. Very little siege potential here. Possibly just trading out are the Scarabs and the Mambo, their respective Titans here, as the Solar Scarabs aren't really helping out their boy any. Charging forward just a little bit. Deathwalker, Silence, Echrome, and Zyrhoes would love to push down this tier 2 tower, but a little bit risky. I mean, we've hit that precipice here, AJ. 25 minutes where one team fight, you're losing Fire Giant, you're losing tier 2s, you might even lose a Phoenix.
Well, they're going to be losing the Pyromancer here, right, Hex Mambo, but he might trade out iSilenced for it. He's not going to get anywhere anytime soon, and down he goes, Rapio with the kill.
So low. And the Spirit of the 9 Winds is only going to find one, but it's on Dzoni. That's a priority target. Echrome is in no man's land, just completely between a rock and a hard place there. Bifrost directly into the clutches of Rapio, who picks up a second kill in that fight for themselves. Level 20, 2-0-4. Baba Yaga's doing Baba Yaga stuff, topping the player damage charts, and just... man, Caster's cursed. I am so sorry, Solar Scarabs. You lose one team fight, you lose two, you lose the Fire Giant, and now the question is, AJ, what else do the Solar Scarabs lose?
Well, on the menu for them, there are 3 tier 2 towers up at tier 1 on that left-hand side, 3 Phoenixes, and possibly a Titan, so plenty of them to dine on here in the next 4 minutes of this, what can only be described as objective buffet. That the Solar Scarabs are putting out for them. They have to defend these Phoenixes. That is the #1 priority for the Scarabs. Give the Hex Mambo the towers, forfeit that position, and just try and hold on this game for another 5 minutes, I'd say. Wait until the next Fire Giant spawns up, which will be enhanced, and then you can fight back into them. But for the next 3.5 minutes, whatever Hex Mambo wants, they kind of are going to get.
Right side towers are fallen. Firebird has been exposed. Still 3, though. Towers in total for the Solar Scarabs. You got 2 on the left-hand side and 1 right down the middle lane, a tier 2 tower. And you saw how fast those towers fell. I mean, you've got the attack speed buff from Spudio. You've got the Shogun's Kasari from Julio. You've got so much auto attack damage that these structures on the Solar Scarab side of the map, they're going to fall faster rather than slower.
The left-hand side is where they seem to be gravitated towards now, just to get that final tier 1 off the map. It's low, it's free, might as well take it. And it's also the best one because it's the furthest away from the Fire Giant. Season 10, you should know this by now, especially as solo cast as we are. But it's still in the mid lane. Julio's still lurking around mid as Dzoni, so they're still diversifying their efforts.
Left lane tower goes down. Tier 2 is next up in the eyes here of the Hex Mambo. Dzoni, ever playing the jungler, hanging around that tier 2 in the middle lane. Julio's joining up with a full wave. Looks like a big wave as well. Going to push down the tier 2 in mid. And the Solar Scarabs are left with 3 Phoenixes and 1 Titan here between them and a game 1 loss. Waves moving in. Fire Giant wrapped around the waists of the Hex Mambo, healing him up, giving him a little extra damage.
Well, I don't think Solar Scarabs would have come into this saying, we're going to qualify for the World Championship group stage by beating Hex Mambo 2-0. They would have thought, okay, if we beat them, it's going to be a 2-1 situation. And, you know, it's not the worst game in the world for them. I think they played extremely well so far. There's still a chance for them to turn it around and win this game. Don't forget, it's 28 minutes in. Anything can sort of happen from this point onwards. But they have to start here at the defenses of these Phoenixes, because both the mid and the left-hand side ones are being sieged.
Split fight, 3 on the left from the Mambo, 2 right down the center. And the Solar Scarabs respond in kind. Deathwalker dishing out some healing, making sure the rest of the squad is topped off. Zero's got the ultimate online. Same thing goes for iSilenced. Those are big, space-creating, high-damage ultimates, at least in the case of Zyrhoes. The Hex Mambo, they don't like what they see. They're just going to back off this left-side Phoenix and say, let's grab a Fury, let's grab some farm, let's reestablish our presence on the map and try again next time.
Yeah, and that is about 53 seconds on the Fire Giant left when they retreat. It's now down to 44 seconds. But Solar Scarabs have done exactly what they needed to do. there is going to be the Oni Fury waves to worry about here for the Solar Scarabs, as the Fire Giant spawns in about a minute and a half's time. But by the time they're cleared out, they can go within a Fire Giant pit. They can confidently fight on it.
So, AJ, I gotta ask, why the hesitation there from Hex Mambo? What is it about the Solar Scarabs, or what is it about the Hex Mambo that they didn't like what they saw on that left-hand side?
It's just so difficult to siege into a Yemoja. If she is able to put up those walls and block off the 4 people that don't have leaps, the one person that's in there is just instantly dead. They can't then fight into it because they're 4 versus 5, and the fact that Thor can also appear from anywhere. My main concern would have been the Thor. Apreel was sort of nowhere to be seen on the map, so his dunks would come from anywhere. You don't know when it's going to land down, and if he dunks down unsuspectedly onto Spudio, he's probably going to get a kill onto him.
Fire Giant gonna respond sooner rather than later. About a third of the way there, call it a little bit less than that. Hex Mambo have claimed the Fire Giant pit for themselves. Not too many wards on the map. Vision might be lacking a little bit as Hex Mambo is now clearing that up. Got the Solar Scarabs grouped up as 5 as well. This could be a game-defining team fight here, AJ. If one squad loses too many members, it could just be a march straight to the Titan, as Cozyx would love to grab a clutch, a grab.
Look at what Dzoni is. Dzoni is over on the left-hand side, looking to wrap around the back as old adapting style play like he used to do. Echrome a bit lower there. Fire Giant has respawned. The fight started. iSilenced is forced to beat the block.
There's that flip to kick things off. Dzoni in the backline with a blink in. Echrome dropped the half HP immediately, but look at that dragon. Not finding any critical targets. Cozyx puts the finishing touches on the ADC. What a knock up there from Dzoni. And a nice response from apreel to stop Hex Mambo in their tracks. That might have just saved 3.
And that is probably going to be the Fire Giant. I thought it was going to be the game there for a second, but Hex Mambo going to back off, realizing that Deathwalker is still available, still alive, so the hell can cause a havoc in the fight in that Titan push. Just happy to get this enhanced Fire Giant. But look at the respawns. 30 seconds on Echrome, 38 on Zyrhoes. They could still make a play for the end here.
All 5 members of Hex Mambo not totally healthy. Well, everyone is except Cozyx, I should say, is going to be ticking up from that Fire Giant buff. It's 31 minutes. You know what that means, AJ? Enhanced Fire Giant. It's going to be gracing the Hex Mambo. Zyrhoes and Echrome down for the
Phoenix.
Next 10 seconds. Phoenix, good night. Deathwalker pre-beating. Dzoni dishing out damage. The Titans under attack now. Hex Mambo putting everything they got into it. And the Solar Scarabs putting up a mean 30 minutes against the Hex Mambo. Ultimately fall to the Chaos Squad.
Well, Solar Scarabs, I think they can take heart from that game. Yes, they only got 2 kills. Yes, they lost an objective as well. But they managed to steal an objective, they managed to stall the game for quite a fair bit as well. And they had some times where they were actually in front and controlling the momentum, albeit briefly. But that they can take heart from that game, they can probably run back a strategy again, and go into game number 2 confident even.
When you fight into Hex Mambo for 25 minutes, like you said, that's certainly confidence building. Can you identify one play or one moment where it went wrong and where the Solar Scarabs can try to pivot for game number 2?
Well, there's 2 key moments. First one is going to be the Gold Fury steal, but the second one happened right at the beginning, and that is Julio got Poseidon. Don't give it to him again.
That'll have to be shored up in picks and bans, which is going to come at you after a quick break. Stick around.
That's right. If you ever miss a game, you can go to youtube.com/SmiteVod. But if you want some more interesting content, in-depth discussions with the pros, things like that, well, you can go to youtube.com/SmitePro, where a few days ago we had a Road to Worlds video talking with several of the pros up about the Hounds, and just today, if you haven't caught it yet, the same kind of video but for the Gilded Gladiators, how these teams think that they're going to fare going towards Worlds, you know, their strengths, their weaknesses, what they need to worry about, and, you know, right now it's the Hounds, it's the Gladiators, but pretty soon, if you go click that subscribe button, you'll be able to see the rest of the teams, as well as soon player interviews as well that will be leading up to Worlds and played at Worlds, so that you can tune in, see your favorite players' thoughts on your other favorite players and your favorite teams. So make sure you go to youtube.com/SmitePro, subscribe to us, like all of our videos, and leave comments on things, as long as they're nice, but only if they're nice. Don't say anything if you don't have something nice to say, is the golden rule. It's Gore, it's Trelly, and it's a 1-0 lead for Hex Mambo. And Trelly, for a long portion of this,
Right.
it did feel like there was a gold tie, right?
Yeah.
These two saying together pretty often. Hex Mambo, we know, very adept at farming. Scarabs, if we didn't know it, we've learned it today for sure, very adept at farming. But eventually the kills really did start to matter in favor of Hex Mambo, and they got to pull that into more of a lead.
Exactly. It was, you know, the sense of the Solar Scarabs are focusing more so on their farm, whereas the Hex Mambo, they were getting good ganks, they were getting kills, but still staying about neck and neck. And then translating that into late game where it's still an even fight, but the Solar Scarabs weren't pulling ahead in any way, you know, in the fights. It was just, hey, we know how to split push, we know how to get farm where we can. Let's just focus on that aspect, where Hex Mambo said, you know what, we are going to take the fight to you, and that's exactly what happened. It seems like every Hex Mambo set we're going to have to give praise towards Dzoni, but I will continue that here today. The Rat set up a lot. There was a beautiful, I believe, 3-man knockup to confirm the first sets of Phoenixes going down, which also just, you know, led into the end of the game. But this Rat, across the map, as you might expect, trying to match that pressure that a Thor has. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. This time, Dzoni did exactly what he needed to, and because he did that, he was able to get, you know, Julio a healthy lead. The Poseidon's able to rotate out and be a big menace, and that was kind of the idea, and I think it ended up working out. Just took a little bit to get there.
Yeah, it feels like this Poseidon, we haven't seen a whole ton of it. Sometimes it's been banned. In fact, one game he just was completely ignored. But this is why you play him, right? It's getting that lead. And what I love about all these highlights, and something that you can see about Hex Mambo, this is part of what makes this team so powerful. They're down in gold right now,
Yep.
but up 5 kills. But the thing is that, like you said, they're not only bringing the fights, they were bringing every single one of those fights together, right? It wasn't, oh, hey, this guy just 1v1 to the hell out of everybody and won the game for his team. It was, okay, here's Spudio, and he gets this kill because there's Dzoni and there's Cozy who are creating space for him. Or here's Julio, who gets this insane kill. That was set up because Dzoni and Rapio did a lot of damage. Like, it really did feel like the team was playing as a unit. You can kind of see that spread out in their damage, right? The people you'd expect to do a little more have it sprinkled on there, but it did feel like the team was playing as a unit. And unfortunately for the Scarabs, despite the fact that they can farm real well, it only fared so well when it came to a full-on grouped-up team fight, especially in the late game.
And see, that's my point, right? The Scarabs showed that they could keep their gold even ahead at times, but the fighting never really came online. They were never able to say, hey, we can stop what you're doing aggression-wise. They were just like, we're going to be able to stay even. So maybe this time around, get that same gold lead.
Put your fists up.
And then put your fists up.
Put your dukes
Exactly.
up.
Yeah. Put
Get out
some
there.
sort of aggression back at the Mambo there.
See what they'll be able to do. They're going to stay first pick as we jump into game 2. Mammon, Chernobog, Poseidon get banned out on their side from the Scarabs. Other side, Opwash, Thoth, and the Athena. Leaves open just a few things, and Raijin is going to be the #1 go-to. But this has been not only interesting to me, but impressive, I think, all around, which is that I feel like Spudio has been super willing to just, you know what, hey, lock me in, Hachi, and not think twice about it, right? Doesn't matter. There's other gods, like we know Echrome's Heimdallr's really good. Does not seem to bother Spudio whatsoever. Hachi's available. Grab him up.
Yep, the extra range, the safety, the hard carry potential later on with the attack speed stem. All good things in this current meta, which means Hachi's always going to be top of the tier list whenever available. But the Heimdallr, very safe as well. That's going to be right there in that safety category over in dual lane. Pair with a Fafnir, now your objective shred's pretty insane. Early pressure, not so much. You're probably going to be playing safe in that regard because the hammer doesn't necessarily bring that much kill potential, but you're playing for late game, right? You want that Draconic transformation to give you the course, the team-wide attack speed. That's when your objectives start looking real clean.
Agni locked in for Hex Mambo. Something that we've been seeing, again, a fair bit from Europe specifically this week has been this Agni and solo. Gets locked in alongside that Ganesh. This catches me off guard, and it would maybe catch me a little more off guard if it weren't for the fact that it's Zyrhoes. If it was literally any other mid laner, I'd be like, oh my god, Trelly. Whoa, what's going on? Like, Chronos didn't even, like, his buffs were small, and that's not even this patch. Like, that's Tuesday. That's not happening yet. So where is it? Why is it here? It does feel like it's just a Zyrhoes pick, but it does put, like, a timer, right? We were talking about, hey, your farm game's great. If you get to late game with a Chronos, you can do pretty good, especially when he's backed up by a Fafnir.
That's true. The issue I'm having, though, is that the Scarabs weren't able to get to that late game last game, right? So you're picking more gods that need to get level 20, need to get itemization to really hit their stride, whereas Hex Mambo, they've got the Camazotz that comes out of the gate swinging. Agni, around level 4, not so great. Level 5, you get your bomb. Now you can actually step up towards the range of these mid laners. So we'll have to see if the Scarabs can stall this game out, because that's where their comp really does succeed.
Yeah, their draft, it's going to be really powerful if they can get there. We'll see if Hex Mambo will let them get there, or if they'll close this one out 2-0. But jumping down to the casters.
Well, Scarabs trying their best here to get to a game number 3 against the Hex Mambo. You got Dimes, you got Alpha Jackal, and the Solar Scarabs have a plethora of comfort picks. You got Apreel on the dodgy, Chronos and Zyrhoes. You've got the Heimdallr and the Echrome. It seems like the Solar Scarabs have completely neglected the meta in this case, thrown their hands in the air. We'll accept the Raijin, I guess, and said, you know what? Let's just play exactly who we're comfortable on. Let's play our game, see if it pans out.
I mean, there are 3 things that are certain in life: death, taxes, and Zyrhoes picking Chronos at some point in a tournament. That is just a guarantee fact of life that is going to happen regardless of whether Chronos is meta or not. This man loves this pick and is probably one of the better players in the world at this pick. Silence, looking for a steal, doesn't get it, and now he's in trouble.
And a tough spot here is going to slow the enemy opposition. It's got to be enough. Spudio and Cozyx don't have the movement speed to catch up to the Fafnir. Steal didn't go off completely as planned, but at the very least, iSilenced did not give up his life for it. I want to go back to Zyrhoes here on this Chronos. We've seen,
no.
Never mind. It sounds locked down. The body blocks are perfection from Cozyx, and Spudio ends up making iSilenced pay for that ill-fated step forward. I mean, I love body blocks. Alpha Jackal and Cozyx just put on a clinic.
Oh, it is one of the best things in the world when you're playing with somebody and you two just trap them up against the wall and there's something that they can do. It is probably the best feeling in Smite when you do that.
It was just a little bit BM there, as Echrome was also dropped to under half HP. All right, now, Chronos. We've been seeing pretty much a standard mage build appear, right? You've got the insert starter here, Book of Thoth, Divine Ruin. You can kind of make a couple choices from there. Is Chronos looking to continue down that path that other mages have paved before him, or maybe go a couple rings, or what does that look like?
I think Zyrhoes in the past, what he's done is he's got into a very traditional mage style build with maybe 1 attack speed item on there just to give him a little bit of boost because of the accelerate passive. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just goes in for a standard mage build here. Goes for the Book of Thoth and gets a Polynomicon at some point like he did in the last game. Maybe gets 1 ring. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a Telkine's ring, just for a little bit of extra sustain. But there's so many different possibilities that you could do with this Chronos, like you pointed out. Zyrhoes is just he's gonna surprise us. He will.
And that combination of Zyrhoes and Apreel with the dodgy and the Chronos, that's a lot of damage. Pretty much throughout the entirety of the game, you're going to be doing plenty of shred and plenty of burst damage as well. So keep your eyes on that middle left part of the map. Likely both these solo laners going to be left to their own devices, as Julio taking Agni into the solo lane is not a pick we often see.
No, but Julio has played this in the past, actually, and he's done quite well on it. He's mostly played it in ranked when he's just having a little bit of fun, but I think there's been 1 or 2 games where he has played it in a competitive setting and has done extremely well with it. My key point to have a look at, though, is that the Solar Scarabs composition lends itself quite well to the phases of the game. You have a look at their jungler, you have a look at their solo laner. They're both good AoE control gods that are suited for the late game. Their mids, their support and their ADC, good single target lockdown, good burst on single targets, good for the early game when you're looking to pick people off. It's a very well-balanced composition here from the Solar Scarabs that can do well. They just need to get off to a much better start than they have done in these first 3 minutes.
iSilenced just swaying the Hex Mambo from grabbing the shield buff. Echrome has joined the support on the left side of the map here. It's going to be a coin flip. Who grabs it? iSilenced going to pick up the shield buff. On the flip side, though, AJ, what does Hex Mambo's draft looks like in terms of coherence and scaling into the mid and late game?
Oh, I would say that...
That's what I asked you.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna give you my answer.
Right.
You know, I need to buy time to think about it. You know how to stalling? It's what I'm doing right now to you. You know, I'm just stalling you out so I can give you myself more time to think of an answer.
Hey, did it work?
No. Well, it kind of worked. So Hex Mambo, they are very well suited for picking off somebody in that mid 3v3. You have a look at their composition. It's very good. They're very single target focused from Cozyx and from Dzoni specifically. So I wouldn't be surprised if about level 9, level 10 is when they start looking for a very aggressive pickoffs, especially onto iSilenced, who is level 3, by the way. Very juicy target for them to just keep further down on this Fafnir. But then late game, they got good control still. Julio's going to be their big AoE control god. Then the rest of them is just going to be focused on the single target.
Whoo, Deathwalker taking a ton of damage. Julio, excuse me, not Julio, Dzoni goes up in the air and easily secures a kill onto the solo laner. Apreel might be in a tough spot here. Up on the Palo, Julio just out of range, is just waiting to dash back in aggressively. Dzoni yoinked back in, but nothing for it as Apreel has to walk away from the certainty of bombs raining down upon his head. Hex Mambo grab a second kill and throw it on their all-star jungler.
And so far, they are in lead about 700 gold. It's what you would expect from a team that's got this many kills. Is Zyrhoes forced to rewind in the mid lane. They're going to try and ambush him again.
Oh, Zyrhoes in a tough spot, but Dzoni a little bit off the mark with some of the abilities. Rapio chugging out some home sweet home fire bolts. And Zyrhoes is going to walk away without half HP. But that Chronos ultimate, I mean, it is not short. Okay.
Now, that was a long respawn to sacrifice. And the beads as well. He is very hung out to dry here by him as alone to win. 56 seconds left on it. It's actually shorter than you first realized it to be. I mean, probably because he's got the 10% coming out from the Sands of Time. It really does depend on what, buff he got from the masks. Because if he got a red buff that's powered with blue buff, that's an extra 10% CDR. It looks like he did.
Yep, great point. Got a little bit of extra CDR on board for Zyrhoes, which means the rewind is going to be up sooner than anticipated. Typically, a much longer cooldown. It's going to be a little bit shorter. Same thing goes for Dzoni, though. He's going to have those beads and blink online in under a minute. Same thing goes for the ultimate that has just ticked back in that blue diamond on the right-hand side of your screen there. Spudio and Echrome going at it here on the left-hand side. And once again, I mean, this kind of feels like parody of the first game where neither one of these squads were particularly apt to step forward and kick something off. But if Dzoni or Apreel see an opportunity, they haven't been shy about taking advantage.
I'm really surprised, though, that teams haven't tried to harass Rapio a little bit more in this mid lane. He had a free game last game, near enough. I don't think he got ganked once. So far, he's having a pretty free game again, despite the fact that Dzoni is going to be roaming around the map, not really paying too much attention to mid lane. Cozyx kind of doing the same. You can gank Rapio a fair bit, so why not just do so?
Locked down here, but plenty tanky. Only level 6, one level behind. Got some Gauntlet of Thebes stacks online as well. Now it's a full-on rotation from the Hex Mambo onto the Gold Fury. You knock out the support just a little bit, and Hex Mambo say, we got to get something going here. Immediately turning on to Zyrhoes. Rewind is up and gets Zyrhoes way out of dodge there, but Apreel has been put down. Silence is going to become a dragon and likely leap away. There it goes. Hex Mambo still plenty healthy, though. Only Spudio really looking worse for the way here. Dzoni with the finishing touches, and Rapio just rushes over the wall with one of those potions to pick up iSilenced. Wasn't a free Gold Fury to start, but it could be.
I don't think they're going to go on the Gold Fury. A bit too low with Spudio. Echrome still arrives into that vicinity. He's probably going to get a kill onto the ADC, and that is then that's game over for Spudio at that point. It's going to be a bit too far behind. So they're just managing this game really well, not taking the risks when they don't need to, but taking the risk here as they go to Echrome, who's out of mana.
Completely. I mean, Echrome is locked down here. A couple more auto attacks out of Spudio to finish off the opponent ADC there. 0 kills for the Solar Scarabs, and the Hex Mambo have chalked 5 onto their tally. A nice little nest egg of a gold lead here, building about 1,700, we'll call it, ish. 1,800. Just a little bit off there. And which, I mean, 1,800 again, not significant in the grand scheme of things, but compared to last game, where the Hex Mambo were lagging a little bit, you give Hex Mambo a small gold lead and it quickly starts to slip away.
Yeah, Hex Mambo game number 1. We're like, okay, Solar Scarabs, we're just gonna, we're gonna take it slow. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna, see what you're all about again, see if there's anything new. Oh, there's nothing new? Okay, just foot on the gas straight away into 4th gear from minute number 1. And it all starts with them punishing iSilenced for something he's been doing probably for about half a year now, just trying to annoy and take away a tiny little bit of farm at the beginning of the game. It's finally come undone for him, and look at the snowball effect that's happened from it.
The tiniest of butterfly wings affects avalanches in the Alps or something like that. As the Hex Mambo,
yeah, I think that's the phrase.
Still looking at this Gold Fury on the left-hand side. Rotations going over to the duo lane. Apreel's not super far behind of Dzoni in terms of just about on par in terms of items, levels, maybe half a level, call it. Wants to get the shield buff started here. It's a 3v3 on the left-hand side.
Oh.
Dharmic Pillars have been dropped by Cozyx. Doesn't really connect with anyone, though. Silence slows down the Elephant. Apreel looking to pull back in. 2, only grabs 1, though. Spudio annihilates the dodgy. Rapio's made the rotation as well. So much damage behind this Baba Yaga. It's just going to be a question of the target. iSilenced able to leap away from danger, throw a little attack speed onto Echrome, because why not? Heads right back into the fray, though. And Hex Mambo able to snag Apreel at the very least, but once again, the Solar Scarabs, excellent job chunking the Hex Mambo just enough where they can't go on an objective.
Oh, if Dzoni hits those Vampire Bats, I think Zyrhoes is in a world of trouble there, but Gold Fury is going to be taken out. This is even more worrying for the Solar Scarabs, as this gold lead is just going to go up and up and up for Hex Mambo. Gold Fury taken by them. The gold lead extends yet again to about 3,000, just shy of 3,000. Deathwalker doing what he can to try and influence things over to the right-hand side, but the left-hand side is where it's all falling apart here for the team in blue.
And it's going to be another 5 to 6 minutes before these solo laners really start to make their imprint on this game, which means the Solar Scarabs are going to have to cling to the edge for at least another 4 minutes, probably at the minimum, before Deathwalker can get involved. Level 11 Raijin Spudio driving a half HP. Apreel's right around the corner, has that teleport online, inherent in the kit. In the dodgy, can definitely 100 to 0 at this point. And maybe not, actually. Hasn't finished off that second item quite yet. Likely to be probably a Brawler's Beat Stick there, following up the Jotun's Wrath. It's Cozyx. Would love to grab a shield buff for the first time, perhaps, this game for the big Ganesh.
Doesn't happen. Now Apreel's having to teleport away. We haven't seen too much of Apreel in these fights. The first fight, he goes in, gets silenced out before he can go onto the pillar, and then dies. Next fight, over around that behind the Gold Fury, manages to get up onto the pillar, but when he tries to pull somebody in, it's just been, well, there's a CC immunity there, CC immunity there. I pulled in the Ganesh, but that's actually detrimental for me because now I'm getting silenced. It's been difficult for him to influence this match, and Deathwalker getting influenced on by Dzoni right now, but he's gonna retreat.
And that's the pros and the cons, I suppose, of this solo lane mage build. The pro for the mage is you're much tankier. The con for the enemy jungler is you are much tankier.
Well, he's not going to be that tanky right now. If you have a look at his build, he's not got much in the way of physical defense just yet. Probably just the start of it coming out from the Vamp Shroud and a little bit from that Tier 1 Breastplate of Valor. It's the health that he's got right now, which is the issue for Dzoni. Yes, he's going to chunk him considerably with the amount of damage that he's got on his build. But the health there from Deathwalker in his build is what really allowed him to survive that gank.
iSilenced might be in a tough spot here. Cozyx has some lockdown. Nice stun there from Zyrhoes to keep the support healthy and topped off here. Zyrhoes and iSilenced hovering around this Tier 1 tower. Pyromancer is going to respawn in just a few moments here as the Hex Mambo have made their presence known pretty much all across the map. Except for the solo lane, only that 1 kill onto Deathwalker has really made an impact. Zyrhoes using the rewind there, though, might be huge, as the Hex Mambo have been slowed down from iSilenced. Cozyx is falling low, but plenty tanky. Rapio in the home sweet home, tanky, plenty of damage. Switches targets to iSilenced, who is not going to die either. And I think you used the word disjointed a little bit ago, or maybe in the last game, and feels like Hex Mambo haven't really been able to sync up CC or damage.
Yeah, it was the previous game where I mentioned that the Scarabs, one of the final fights they had was very disjointed. But I think you are right. The target selection there for the Hex Mambo, I think it was good to initially go into Zyrhoes, but the second he uses his beads and his accelerate to get out of there, the target has to switch almost on a dime to iSilenced at that point to be able to get a kill onto him. Maybe they're not looking for the kills. Maybe they're just looking to force Zyrhoes back, maybe to force him back to base, which you only do if you either kill him or get him super low like they did do. And if that's the goal, mission accomplished.
I mean, Pyromancer taken, so that's a positive, but no towers taken. Tower's still up. Fury's going to respawn a little bit. Sure, that's another neutral objective for the Hex Mambo. You can only build your lead so far, though, before you start having to take some significant team fights, or at least starting to play around the objectives. Dzoni locked down there. And the Solar Scarabs, kudos to them for drawing this XP lead to just about nil, even in solo, even in jungle, even in mid. I mean, even iSilenced has climbed back to just about even with Cozyx after that initial stumble in the early game, and it's dead even in the ADC role as well.
Yeah, so far, it's not been the worst in terms of experience for the Solar Scarabs. It's just been a bad experience for them. Bad experience with Zyrhoes as well. Force rewind once more, getting full value out of it, but look where he is, in the middle of the Hex Mambo jungle.
No reversal. Dzoni with a couple auto attacks and the help of his pals take down Zyrhoes. It's going to be a power play, 4v5 for the next 30 seconds. And look at that. How conveniently an Oni Fury on the map right as the middle laner goes down.
Yeah, that is planned by Hex Mambo. They've been doing this the entire game. The second Zyrhoes feels like he's comfortable in stepping out of tower. Oh, it's a rewind up. It's a rewind time. It's time for you to use that, get back into your tower, and stay there for about another minute and a half. Oni Fury is falling down quite quickly, but thanks to the Oracle Vision, Solar Scarabs know what health that's at and how it's going down.
Ooh, big time slow from iSilenced. Going to be a coin flip. Hex Mambo coming out on top. Apreel is up, but only using the Powwow for escape, and nothing doing it. Rapio is going to take out the jungler. Silence in a tough spot here. Hex Mambo running down the enemy support. Pops into that dragon form. A leap away might save the life of iSilenced, but no. Silence will fall. Zyrhoes turns it right back around onto Rapio, though, and finds one for himself. And the Solar Scarabs finally erase the 0 in their kill column.
Yeah, it's no longer Zyrhoes, it's just 1-0 on his assist column, but 1-1 and 0, finally managing to get a kill for the Solar Scarabs, although kind of handed to him a little bit by Rapio, as he goes a little bit too deep into the jungle there. But that's just a little bit of a teaser of what Zyrhoes is capable of doing on this Chronos, and as you know what Chronos does, he just ramps up consistently throughout the game. He gets more and more deadly, gets more scary as time goes on. 16 minutes into the game is when he started to think, this Chronos might be an issue at some point in the future. Not right now, but maybe in the future.
Key here for the Solar Scarabs, arriving at that future unscathed with their Titan still standing. That's certainly number one here on the minds of the Solar Scarabs. So that gold lead has slowly been trickling away from the Scarabs and into the pockets of the Hex Mambo to the tune of about, let's see, 50, 20, 2,800 or so. Tower still online, though. In fact, Hex Mambo currently ailing with one less tower than the Solar Scarabs.
And something I want to see is I want to see the graphs, specifically the gold graph. Yeah, it's not dropped down horrendously like it threatened to do, because these Hex Mambo, they raced into about, 1,000 gold lead quite early on. It's only extended by another 2,000 at most in about 12 minutes. So Solar Scarabs have sort of stemmed the bleeding just a little bit. They're starting to maybe get to a point where they can fight, but they have to take it now because, well, engaged upon is Cozyx.
Big time fight as Deathwalker's made the rotation as well. Could spell the difference in this team fight as Hex Mambo have joined up as 5. Cozyx able to survive the initial engagement. A nice counterpunch there from the Hex Mambo. Drive back the Solar Scarabs, keep their support alive. And the remainder of the Hex Mambo looking pretty healthy here. Only Cozyx really suffering. Deathwalker taking a couple shots from Julio. Pyromancer online. The Hex Mambo pretty much have their choice of how they want to play this one out. Apreel, no ultimate. Only Echrome and Zyrhoes for the Solar Scarabs with their ultimate abilities online. Dzoni and Julio retaining a couple as well. Hex Mambo on the Pyromancer. Solar Scarabs running into it, and they're going to snag the objective. It has been the story of steals here as Apreel takes out Rapio. Is going to pay for it, though. Julio with a flame wave to annihilate the jungler. Dzoni shredding through the enemy team in the air. Leaping forward is Julio. Cozyx leading the charge as well. A couple more auto attacks from Spudio. Takes out the enemy ADC. Hex Mambo may not want to push it any further.
And I think the war drums coming out from Deathwalker there just spells the end of the chase there for Hex Mambo. They pick up 2, but they do lose the Pyromancer for it. A small, tiny victory there for the Solar Scarabs. But as you can see from the graphs, it means absolutely nothing as the Tier 1 tower falls down as well, giving the overall gold lead from that little engagement to Hex Mambo ever so slightly as they extend to 11-2 ahead in the kill department. 19 minutes into the game. It's looking comfortable for Hex Mambo, but maybe not as comfortable as they would like it to be.
And my eyes are on this crit that Spudio's building into. Both ADCs building into crit, but specifically Spudio sitting at 5-0-5 has been absolutely ripping on this Hachi all weekend long. Once that crit item is online, these fights that have been a little bit more sustainy, a little bit more tanky, a little bit more drawn out, they're going to shorten considerably.
Yeah, this is going to be a quick fight. You blink and you miss it sort of fight situation. As Apreel will sort of get more and more damage online. He's been doing well, I would say, in these fights, given the fact that he is the main beads burner. He's one of the main engagers. He's the only one that sort of brings people into one central area together. And the follow-up from it isn't great. Yes, you have a Raijin, but your Raijin's going quite tanky and won't do too much damage. Chronos isn't what you would say AoE follow-up either.
iSilenced just watching this fire giant go down. Solar Scarab's a little bit out of position with Echrome joining the rest of the squad now. It's a 5v5. Cozyx is forced back. iSilenced leaped in aggressively. Didn't find the hammer, though. Julio around the back. Nice double stun to set up the Dharmic Pillars from Cozyx. Driving back the Solar Scarabs. Hex Mambo have got the Solar Scarabs on their back foot now, reclaiming control of the fire giant pit. iSilenced about half. Look at Dzoni on the left-hand side of your screen. He's going to clear out a wave in the middle. Might rotate back in. Blink is online for both these junglers as well. And certainly get pretty close to 100-0 at this point.
Are they trying to swarm onto Dzoni there for a second? But Hex Mambo good in their response to the fact that the jungler was under a little bit of stress there. And now they're going back towards the fire giant started up by Cozyx. Spudio and Dzoni putting in the damage for it. No one from Solar Scarabs is back to base, so there's still being a 5 versus 5 here, but they gotta act quick. Fire giant down to half health.
Deathwalker's got the long-range ultimate online. He's going to use it now. Not as a secure. Rapio does the same exact thing, though. Cozyx takes a ton of damage from Zyrhoes, who has to rewind. It's going to be a 1v1 versus Julio. Meanwhile, in the backline, Apreel up on the Palau, only snagging Dzoni, who's going to be completely fine after getting yoinked back in by the dodgy ultimate. Still, I mean, 100%. Everyone on the map is living. There has not been a single death in this engagement, despite the back and forth, despite the 15k damage that's just been dished out over the last 2 minutes. And both these squads playing it on a knife's edge here.
And if you're Solar Scarabs, you're very happy with that. In fact, you're ecstatic about the fact that none of you died in these engagements, and the fact that you were able to engage a fight yourself rather than being the ones that engaged on. It's looking up for the Solar Scarabs here. And with their composition and the way it scales, you wouldn't back against them to maybe pull something back in this game.
Especially with Zyrhoes approaching full build, getting very, very close. Gold Fury started by Spudio and Julio, but on the other side of the map, iSilenced and Deathwalker have done the exact same thing on the Fire Giant. Hex Mambo taking out the Gold Fury. That tells the Solar Scarabs, hey, they've got a couple members over there. Let's grab something for our trouble here. Pyromancer goes down
silence
to the Order Squad. Hex Mambo following up the retreat here from the Solar Scarabs. But with Spudio over on the left-hand side, it might be ill-advised.
Well, Beacon is going to spawn in just a second, and it is going to be captured here by Hex Mambo once again. Give themselves just a little bit of extra objective damage onto those structures, as well as a tiny bit of movement speed. It's very significant, amount of movement speed as well. It's about 1% per stack of that beacon that they get. And I think they have got all three.
Deathwalker didn't do too much damage there to Rapio. You saw all three of those percussive blasts connect and just really wasn't too much oomph behind him. Deathwalker mainly being used for some of that CC in the ultimate, in the kit. For now, at the very least, as Hex Mambo still sits comfortably on top, 11-2 in kills, gold lead as well. Experience lead has become negligible now as level 20 is being hit across the board.
Yeah, it's just really the supports where the experience difference matters still. Cozyx 2 levels above his opponent in iSilenced, who is level 14 at this point. About a level every minute and a half or somewhere around that point. For iSilenced should hit level 20 at about, I'd say, the 30-32 minute mark at this rate. Which isn't the worst for a support, especially if you're behind for the entirety of the game like Solo Scarabs have been. But now it doesn't feel like they're behind, but it feels like they're caught in a trap there as Echrome is forced to use the beads early before the fight's even kicked off.
Stepping a little too forward there. Loses one of the signature relics of an ADC. The beads still has the Aegis online, however. Beads are going to be down for 160. That's got a significant amount of time and gives Dzoni the opportunity to maybe take a look at this Hunter. Johnny's hovering around the left-hand side. Titans have been unleashed. The Binds of Tartarus cracked. Hex Mambo taking advantage, taking out the Solar Scarabs Titan and marching their own under this tier 1.
Well, there is going to be the pressure on this tier 1 tower. Like you did mention, Hex Mambo going to push in here. The Titan's going to allow them to do so, and Solar Scarabs, they forfeited this because Cozyx wants to go aggressive to engage this fight. Silent caught on the Dharmic Pillars, and Echrome silence as well. Zyrhoes low, forced to use the beads and Aegis.
Dzoni on the left-hand side can't quite dive in. Doesn't matter, though. Spudio takes out Zyrhoes. Doesn't trade at all for it. Hex Mambo with 5 strong pushes their Titan under the tier 2 tower and immediately heads back to Fire Giant to capitalize on their success. Zyrhoes down for the next 38 seconds. This is going to be a free Fire Giant for the Hex Mambo. They're going to back, they're going to heal, and they are going to siege.
And that is going to be, like you mentioned, the objective taken there for the Hex Mambo. Apreel trying to go around the corner to see if he can steal anything. Down to half health because Julio is creating a good zone. Deathwalker there as well to create some slow, create some damage. Gonna need some back in return as well, but Hex Mambo, they're not gonna care about the fact they take a little bit of poke there because they've got Fire Giant. They're gonna heal that up right away by backing over to base and spending all their hard-earned gold. Full builds are gonna be across the board here for the Hex Mambo, or maybe just one item still needing a tier or 2.
AJ, if you're the Solar Scarabs, you've been watching this game bleed away for the last 20 minutes or so. I mean, how do you try to stifle some of that loss? Where are you now looking to capitalize on this map to try to claw your way back into a game 2 and potentially a game 3?
I'm looking at the map thinking, right, how do we want to do picks and bans in our next game and our next set? This one, you have to just go with the flow with this game, I think. And try and make sure you steady the ship until the point where your composition really hits its stride in that late game. You got yourself a Chronos, you have a Darji, you do have a Fafnir, one of the better scaling supports in the game, and you do have yourself the Heimdallr as an ADC, probably one of the better ADCs, again, in that late game. So if you could hold out for about another 5 minutes, then you can start to think potentially about, okay, we could do this, we could do that, we're then going to control this game. With how Hex Mambo, I can't speak right now, with how Hex Mambo have been playing, and the fact that they are 10,000 gold up near enough, you kind of just have to hope that they make mistakes, and that's not what Hex Mambo do.
Mambo taking out a Pyro on the right-hand side, a Primal on the left-hand side, put a Runic Bomb in their pocket for later, and have completely cleared the map. All that's left for them to do is take out a tier 2 in mid and a tier 2 in left, and the Solar Scarabs will once again find themselves in the same position they did in game number 1, defending 3 Phoenixes and 1 Titan. Biggest difference now is there is no game after this one if they lose. Rapio's up in a home sweet home. iSilenced trying to start things off early. Who defends under Phoenix these days? You do it now. Apreel takes out Julio in this fight. Rapio falling low as well. Deathwalker is going to die for it, but turns it right back around. Raijin doing the damage. Dzoni finds Apreel in the jungle, doing jungler things. Echrome so far forward, falls to those high-powered auto attacks from Spudio. Zyrhoes Is that a second timeline there? The alternate timeline trigger, Zyrhoes. No rewind, just going to put out as much damage as he possibly can and delay the deicide. 3-piece for Dzoni. 0 lives on the map for the Solar Scarabs. 1 tier 2. It's going to be 1 Phoenix and 1 Titan to go as Hex Mambo are going to step into the base of the Solar Scarabs.
I think they just end the game here. 20 seconds on Deathwalker is the nearest respawn time, but they have minions pouring in. They have their support. They have the 2 highest damage characters in their composition. And it's going to be a clean 2 over the Hex Mambo as they take this game in 28 minutes. 1 hour of gameplay is all it takes to dispatch of the Scarabs.
I mean, 3-0 so far, AJ, in this weekend of play. Obviously, Hex Mambo are going to move on to tomorrow. They still have a little bit of SMITE left in the tank here. But what more can be said about the dominance of this European squad? Hex Mambo has shown their vigor over and over and over, but the Solar Scarabs kind of struggling against the Tartarus Titans in that last set, putting up a fight here into the Hex Mambo, not completely hopeless for the Beatles.
No, I think game number 1 is an accurate representation of what you think of the Solar Scarabs. Game number 2 is an accurate representation of what you think of Hex Mambo. It's 2 completely different games, and Hex Mambo, they still look scary as they have done all year.
2-0 for the Hex Mambo. It's going to be it for us casters. Throw it back to the desk to break it down.
It's a 2-0 win, and much like Alpha Jackal just said at the very end there, right? You see the Scarabs, I think in Game 1, showcase what their strengths were.
Right.
In Game 2, you get to see an almost unfiltered and unadulterated Hex Mambo. They just get to come out, play their game, play their style. And unfortunately for the Solar Scarabs, knocks them down in the bracket. They're not out again just yet, but Hex Mambo are putting themselves in a great position, Jelly, because they've only won.
Yeah, and this is the position that most would expect them to be in, right? They're top seed for a reason. They look unbeatable. If this is the second seed, it was not very close this game, in particular the first game, a little bit more so, but the Hex Mambo essentially just taking care of business here. Dzoni gets off to a great start on the Camazotz. That's not going to slow down for the rest of the game. And surprise, surprise, Spudio on the Hachiman also absolutely popping on. I believe 8 kills by the end of the game on the Hachi. Just a ridiculous stat line. And that's what you can do when your front line creates that much space for you. Surprising that it's, you know, Agni counting as the front line in this case, but it ended up working out. The tanky Agni build, so much CC, so much damage control. It was actually forcing some pretty solid relics as well. I mean, if that's your siege, it's just drop Dharmic Pillars, and then everyone sort of groups up and just does their job. It would make perfect sense that the game goes as it did because they just operate on all fours.
And really, what you get to see, I think a lot of it, and we had this conversation a little bit, but you know, the Scarabs, we were wondering, you've locked in something that's built for late game, can you get there? And it feels like Hex Mambo put the pressure on early and maybe faster because of that, right? They're like, hey, you're Chronos. Like, we could just beat you up right now, and we don't have to worry about it. And as long as we keep that amount of pressure on, guess what? You don't get to late game, right? It's 1, 3, and 2. It's not like the end of the world slash line and mid. Same thing. Deathwalker's 1, 2, and 0. Echrome's only 0 and 3. Like, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, you guys were just dying a whole ton. It was, okay, when the pressure was applied and where the pressure was applied, good luck getting out of it, especially when, you, like you said, Spudio's 8-0 and 6, 6-0 and 8 to mirror that for Dzoni. And as you had mentioned, you know, Julio showing up, but I think the 16 total assists that Ganesha was able to put up, the amount of pressure that Cozyx had, and spread across this map. Everybody on Hex Mambo just looked good, and Trelly, that's why they're such a huge threat, and that's also why they're the #1 seed in Europe right now.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everyone did their job, and that's exactly what you would expect. Still, I know that Zyrhoes just loves playing Chronos, but it just feels like if you could get... I mean, I guess the meta is not really mages that come online early, but, you know, favoring 30-plus minutes in a game against a Hex Mambo when you're already down 0-1 just seems like you were putting yourself in a little bit of a worse position, but I understand. If they were able to get it, and you get Chronos online, and Zyrhoes hits like 6 items, then I'd be calling him a genius for picking that pick. So they take a gamble, doesn't end up working out, but as you said earlier, their journey is not over yet.
Yeah, that's the biggest deal right now, right? Again, so they started in 2 different groups, both of those best of 3, double elim. They proved themselves in the top 2 of each group, and that's every single team so far. And now we're in Group C, which admittedly should just be the qualifier group, right? It's exactly what it is. That's what these teams are fighting for. And with Hex Mambo winning that, they are one step closer and now one win away from advancing to the group stages at the SMITE World Championship just the week before we are in Arlington, Texas. And that 2-0 is a big dub for them. Like you said, though, Scarabs not done yet. They get knocked down to the lower bracket. And the question is going to be, A, who is their opponent? We'll find that out in just a second. Wargs and Tanuki will be playing. And then B, will their path end there? Because, as you can see, so match 13, elimination match, and match 15 is an elimination match. Winners of 15 and 14 go to the group stages, and we'll be figuring those out. I believe they're the last 2 sets tomorrow that we'll be watching to see those, because right now we've got to figure out, A, who's going to be joining them in those positions on the bracket, which is going to be what the Wargs and the Tanuki are bringing for us, and then, of course, watching Scarabs versus whoever loses this next set, who moves on to the next one and gets that opportunity to continue to try and qualify. But we've still got to whittle them down just a little bit. We've got the Wargs, the number 3 seed, taking on the Tanuki, the number 4 seed, coming up right after this quick break.
Patience, I'm running out of patience. There's gotta be somebody who can save me. Gotta be someone who feels the same. Cause I've been all by myself, got nobody else to help ease my mind. I feel so lonely, so God